welcome you to the SparkPlugs webinar series. This week we're going to be talking about 3 hidden gems of direct mail automation, and we have our partner Cloud2You with us. It's going to be covering the content. So we welcome you and we thank you for taking some time out of your day to join with us. Just a quick introduction here. I'm David York. I'm the president of SureShot Media, and we are also the creators of SparkPlugs, which are a set of apps that help you gain more value and enhance the functionality within Eloqua. And then with us today, I've got John Klein, who's the product evangelist for Cloud2You. How you doing, John?
I'm doing well, thanks. Great to be here.
Great. So with that, I'll just have a couple housekeeping items, and then we're going to jump right in and turn this over to John and let him talk to you about those 3 gems of direct mail automation. Just a couple things here. Our event today is going to be fairly concise. We try to keep these as short and sweet as possible, respect your time, and give you a lot of valuable content in a short period of time. So you're looking at 30 to 40 minutes in length for us from this event. We will have a Q&A time at the end of the presentation. So if you would like to enter your questions in the questions window, we will get to those and answer those after John is finished with his presentation. So again, thanks for joining, and without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and give the presentation rights over to John, and we'll get going.
Perfect. Well, thank you, David, and let me just confirm that everybody can see my screen okay, and we're good to go.
Yep, there it is.
David, all right, perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you again, and it's a pleasure. As David mentioned, I'm a product evangelist with Cloud2You, and working with SureShot, it's been our pleasure to bring some really neat opportunities to Eloqua through the SparkPlug, and I'm excited to uncover hopefully some gems that you might find valuable today. And I do encourage you to ask those questions as we move along so that you don't forget them, because we will have dedicated time for you towards the end of this webinar. So let's go a little bit into an overview and look at what we're going to cover today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the state of the mailer, right? We just got through the State of the Union, so I thought, understanding a little bit of the mailer. There's a lot of misinformation about that in the marketplace today. We're going to look at some common delivery dilemmas. What are some things that you guys are likely dealing with today as it relates to the mailer? We're going to look at a stamp of opportunity, some ways that mailers kind of might be emerging, or even kind of a hidden gem that we can take advantage of. And we're going to look at 3 of these in particular. Number 1, we're going to do less more, see what that means and why that's valuable. I'm going to encourage you not just to mail, but to correspond with your leads and prospects and clients. And I'm going to encourage you how to be the apple of their eye. And we all know Apple and how prolific they are. And there's some ways that you can emulate them using what we're going to look at today. And then finally, we're going to look at what is direct mail automation, and just kind of what do we mean by that, and how might you take advantage of that. Finally, we're going to have the direct Q&A to answer your specific questions. And so I hope you bring really good ones, because we want you to get the most value out of today's webinar. And that often comes with you asking very specific questions about your particular circumstance. So let's go ahead and start in on the state of the mailer. So one is, I'm in the software space, and I hear a phrase, print is dead, like almost daily. And so I think one of the things that is very important for us to consider about the state of the mailer is that we receive mail every day. And so there's certainly some value in people doing this, and I think that there is a clear benefit that's really just hiding in plain sight. One, I think all of us can understand and say, well, what mail don't you like? Well, we don't like junk mail. Well, what defines junk mail? Well, it's the stuff I don't like. It's not anything. It's just the stuff I don't like. The things I do like, I very much enjoy. And so the actual medium of mail is not the issue at all, though it's become the culprit in some people's mind. Let's just look at, as one example, what does the marketplace say? What are they investing in businesses today using? Because if something doesn't work on a regular basis, they're going to try something else. So there's a total of about $360 billion in direct mail in the marketplace on an annual basis. Now, I know many of us have heard of, well, there's all these emerging technologies, things like text messaging and email and really very intelligent email, and we have all sorts of other digital mediums. Well, all of those mediums combined are about 310 billion. So direct mail is still kind of the big brother on the block, and that has to tell us something. To say, regardless of what we see with, the emphasis in the marketplace or the perspective people may have, the fact is that mail is not going anywhere, and it is very much still in play because we can see the evidence in the investment today. So it must be delivering value um, to those who are leveraging it. And then finally, there's a couple other aspects, right? What about market demands? Like, for example, healthcare, financial services, nonprofit. There are certain markets that are just used to, and in some senses, compliance requires them to have elements come in the mail, right? Certain aspects of delivery dates. These things are important. And the second aspect is there are 4 generations in the marketplace here. We're dealing with Gen Y, Gen X, we're dealing with the boomers, we're dealing with the greatest generation. And these generations, really for the first time in history, we have 4 at the same time. Some of them really prefer print, and others are very open to getting text messages. And so the issue is, how do you recognize and communicate with all of them in a consistent manner? And so the mailer is not going anywhere, definitely for these reasons and many others. And so I just wanted to share that because we find that these are some unique elements we bring to the table when discussing this with people. And I think it builds a good case for at least exploring what you're all doing today. So let's look at some common delivery dilemmas, right? If the state of the mailer is such that, well, people are using it, it's validated, it's working for them, what holds people back? What are the challenges that people experience if they wanted to participate in that $360 billion for their own benefit to get returns? Well, one aspect is data quality. Most often today, the way things happen is that you have 1, 2, or 3 of these big campaigns in a particular year, and so there's a large endeavor around data, around capturing data, validating data, compiling it, getting the spreadsheets together, working with the mail house, figuring out the block-by-block strategy, etc. And some of the challenges there are keeping that stuff up to date. Because sometimes you're leveraging files that you used the last time you did this. There's not a constant process of kind of updating this. So some of the challenges with that data quality, you can imagine, costs go up, conversions go down, and ultimately many of those changes, they stay in those spreadsheets year after year. Second aspect is that there's a lot of emphasis on the medium. What's the creative? What's the card? What's the sales letter? How is it designed? And often, if you're working with a particular mail house or you have those resources in-house, you might be limited where the medium itself saying, look, we always send a postcard, so you need to make sure your message fits the postcard. Rather than the reverse, which would be, well, the message is what's most important. The strategy around what we're trying to tell people is really the most vital element. Well, shouldn't we be able to pick the medium that really matches our message? So that's a challenge, in that the medium tends to take the forefront and the message becomes compromised. Additionally, you have integration challenges, which is, okay, so you're exporting this data. How are you going to, for example, get this data, the updates that you might find back in, even if it's returned mail? How are those going to get back into whatever system you're using, right? Whether it be Eloqua or, or elsewhere that your addresses might live. Additionally, what if this direct mail piece, we want it to actually work with this other campaign, which relates to a Facebook kind of Twitter campaign? How do we kind of integrate those pieces and make sure it all kind of works well together? That's really, really hard to do because there's just a lot of moving parts in a direct mail campaign today. There's just, not only is there the creative and the message, there's the production, there's all the kind of postage and tracking aspects. Then there's the efficacy. What's the ROI on this? What's the offer? Where are people going to kind of convert, and how are we kind of keeping that all coherent? Even talking about it makes me a little nervous and anxious because there's just a lot of moving parts. And finally, right, it's really labor intensive. And it's not uncommon after one of these major campaigns to have data entry, a whole team of data entry people who are now going and and manually deciphering and entering information back into a system to try and get it right and to understand what happened and what worked. And there's obviously, challenges there with errors and just by nature of, just basic human nature. Some estimates hold this 5 to 1, that the actual cost of the delivery itself and all the production, etc., is 5 times that of what it costs to actually produce the paper and the postage. And so the larger cost here is really on the administration of these campaigns, and that's a dilemma for people today. And finally, you have an element where often these processes, because they're handled by the mail house and kind of outsourced, they're separated from our traditional, what we might, kind of market automation or our CRM activities, right? When we're kind of doing our digital campaigns, mail tends to be kind of in another room, in another department. We wouldn't define them as a really good friend. Well, what if you could begin kind of touching and engaging with mail appropriately, especially within those markets and those generations that really value mail most highly? What if you could do it a little bit more often? That's one aspect. And as you do it a little bit more often, what if you knew a little bit more about them, right? Because you're doing it more often, you know that they've come into the store, that they've made a purchase, that they've had a life event that's occurred. And what if you could actually now have a little bit more relevance in that piece? Because you're sending a little bit more frequently, you can make it a little bit more tailored, maybe towards the season, towards the cycle of their business, towards that life event. Even things like thank you cards are, it's relevant towards some specific event. And what if you could provide a little intuition, right, where you could begin to kind of anticipate things happening in their lives, right? Because you can send it so easily, right? You could really start to have a conversation through the mail rather than simply kind of a push campaign appeal, and really be more intelligent about it. So we think there's a tremendous opportunity to leverage mail and to revitalize the medium in what's often being called hybrid marketing, which is this element where we're leveraging mail as part of the other aspects that we're doing, so that we can do it more frequently with greater relevance and even provide some intuition where we're learning a little bit to anticipate a bit with our contacts. So let's talk about three gems in particular that help you really uncover the detail and the benefit of this stamp of opportunity as it relates to mail. And the first one is doing less more. So most of us hear every day this idea of I want to do more with less, right? And it's a good mantra. And I think there's a related element related to mail that is, what if we could do less more? And the key here talks about instead of doing, or in addition to doing these large campaigns that you may have 2 or 3 times a year, what if you could send smaller batches of mail more often, right? So we kind of get into the frequency element. So let's talk about some of the benefits of this gem. One, if you're sending fewer numbers, a smaller batch at any given time, generally that batch is going to be more understood. You're going to understand what's the affinity, what do these people have in common, what's kind of the segment that we have placed these people into, and therefore the creative doesn't have to be so generic, and the message, because I'm reaching out to so many people, I can now make it much more relevant and much more specific. And people tend to respond a lot better to something that's relevant because they feel like the sender is really, they know me. They've taken the time to craft something that's really relevant to me. And that's not junk mail. The only mail I get that's junk mail is stuff that's irrelevant, that I don't like. Everything else I like. So that's one benefit, is fewer numbers mean more relevance. Additionally, if it's easier for you to put together a design, right, the creative and the message, you can now create better offers. You can take some of that time that you used to spend in the creative, right, and figuring out all the details around that, and now start with something that takes you 80% of the way there, and you can spend that time on the message, on the offer. What's going to really matter to these people? What are they going to respond to? How can we really help them take the next step in their journey of making this decision? So better offers certainly result in better conversions. And so doing this offers that benefit. And third, a smaller segment, doing this a fewer number but more in frequency, allows more clarity. You're able to learn more from each time doing this. So you learn about your recipients, you learn about your contacts and the profiles that you're putting together, and you can have better testing to see how is this working? Is this message actually meaningful to people? Which saves you a tremendous amount of money, right? So in a large mailing, you tend to do that as well, right? You tend to do a small segment of testing, but this allows you to do it across the year, right? So you do it in different seasons with different segments, right? It offers a ton of clarity, which should result in better messaging, better conversions because of your better offers, and you end up not only saving money on the administration, but making more money on the top line because of what you're paying more attention to and learning from. So that's gem number one, is doing less, more, which smaller segments, but doing it more often. So let's move to gem number two. Don't just mail, but correspond with people. And so we're defining correspondence as something that every time you get a letter in the mail, what's the first thing you do? You look at the from address. You see who it's from, because that's just kind of our nature, and it gets us excited because we have a relationship a little bit with that recipient sometimes. It might be our wife or our best friend. It might be that great company that we really love. So the key here is how can we take that to the next level and provide really good insight. So when people receive something, it's not falling into that junk mail category. It's falling into that correspondence category, that I really like having a conversation with this business organization, and this is how we kind of go about doing so. So one, when you do it, kind of in an automated way, you encourage good process, because now it's not a salesperson who has a stack of cards on their desk and they're kind of filling out those cards as they see fit. Now you're doing it based on a particular process, right? When you take that opportunity and you set it to closed, or right when you have that smart filter or that timeline and a certain event happens, they click a link on that email. Now they're going to get something that's really tailored, and that information is getting logged, and so it encourages the kind of setup and the adoption of really good process, and all of this data kind of rolls up into Eloqua, and if you have an integrated system, so you're really encouraging good data hygiene by doing so, because you're able to leverage the mail as kind of a carrot to kind of keep the process going as it should. Second aspect is you get to engage your contacts on their terms. Some people might say, look, I prefer mail. I want to receive everything I get from you in mail. And now you have the ability to make that possible. Also, some people might say, listen, there are some things I like in mail and some things I don't. There are some times that I want things to be delivered here, and sometimes I want things to be delivered there. There's a lot of preferences that you might extend and gather from your contacts that now you can engage them on their terms, because mail can be part of the equation, where previously it was just very difficult to make that a coordinated effort. And you can deliver with a trigger. So in this sense, we define a trigger as some particular event that happens. As I mentioned, you could either click an email, they could go to a website and fill out a form, they could request a quote, etc. Those events can all trigger mail. And so you're not dependent on someone in marketing or someone in sales actually having a backlog of items they need to mail. You can now automate that and make sure it happens in a timely manner based on their behavior, so that you're hitting that contact at the height of their decision-making process, right? They're interested, you're getting them, you're kind of striking while the iron's hot.
Yeah, John, I'll just jump in for a second, provide an
Please.
additional piece of context here. So in thinking in terms of Eloqua, Eloqua, all of you who are users of Eloqua and that are using that platform for marketing automation, think in terms of the digital body language, right? And Eloqua talks a lot around collecting all of that digital body language. What communications is someone sent? Are they responding to? Are they clicking through? Are they visiting certain pages on your website? All of that data Eloqua is collecting. We can now use that valuable information to segment and trigger direct mail automated out of the system. So that just, just to expound on that, the idea of the trigger as it relates to Eloqua itself.
Yeah, great feedback. Exactly. So that's right. And the flexibility around that is really powerful, right? Based on any particular business and the behavior of their customers. Excellent. So that's gem number 2 is don't just send mail, right? Don't be an element of you're just pushing stuff out to people and kind of hoping it hits, but rather correspond, right? Leverage that information that you have and that you've tried so hard to gather, with progressive profiling, another aspect that Eloqua speaks about a lot, and leverage that into your direct mail experience. Excellent. So let's talk about gem number 3, which is how can you be the apple of their eye? And I'm using Apple here as an example of one who I think they are tremendously. I mean, it's not only are they the most valuable company in the world now. I'm sitting here, I'm looking at the time on my iPhone, I'm giving this presentation from my MacBook Pro. But if you've ever kind of been privy to a particular event, their Worldwide Development Conference, etc., what you find is that I see them everywhere, right? So like I get an email, I see it on their website. I get something in the mail. I see a billboard, right? So there's this coordinated kind of synchronization of their marketing, which is really just tremendous. And so imagine if you, even if you're a smaller organization, having the ability to have someone not only receive a text message from you, Eloqua has the ability to send out voicemails. You have the ability to, send out emails clearly, and they can now get touched via mail. It makes you look very powerful and just, again, really synchronized, which presses that message in to your prospect really deeply because they see you everywhere. And this is what we'd all want our clients and prospects to say about us, right? That, man, I see them everywhere. I hear about them all the time. And that brand recognition is really powerful. So let's talk about some ways you can do that, right? So one, we just live in a world today that just people are dealing with multiple mediums and devices. And this is especially true across those 4 generations, right? That you have certain mediums that prefer maybe print and other means with the top 2 generations. And then you have elements that often people prefer more digital means in the bottom 2 generations. And the challenge is we're going to deal with all 4 of them for decades. And so how do you reach out to each of them in a kind of multi-sensory way? So that's one way you can take advantage of this, right, is by leveraging the digital and the mail together to give that impression like Apple does, that, wow, these people are really on top of it, and I love how they send me the email and then they send me a coupon in the mail, right? Additionally, you can have coordinated response trees. And what I mean by response tree is that, as you know, in Eloqua, in your timeline, and David, feel free to jump in on this as well, but you can create certain segments based on specific behavior. So if they do certain things, if they click certain links, if certain values are present on the profile, you can take a different direction. And so now, as part of those, you can now have mail be part of that process, even if it's not behavior related. So for example, you could be keeping track of when that card gets delivered. And after it gets delivered, the next day you could send an email that validates, hey, we're so glad and we hope you got our card. And again, it just shows the power of that. You guys have this all working together in a coherent way. It's not the typical fashion where direct mail goes out and it's really not coordinated with the rest of our marketing just because of how difficult it is. We have to have the mail house and those guys do it. But now you can bring it under the same umbrella and make it coordinated, which really increases the power of all of your other mediums, right? Even your Facebook page and your Twitter stream become more valuable when people are receiving mail from you that reminds them, hey, we're also on Twitter, we're also on Facebook. And if you have a storyline in the content that actually combines these elements, where you have a card they receive in the mail that reminds them of your Facebook contest, right? Then you start to really be really powerful and coordinated, and without a ton of effort, right? Because you can now focus the time you used to spend on all this administration inside the message and creating those really fun offers and storylines around how you want to communicate with your prospects and customers. So that's my encouragement, is to take advantage of these things, to be the apple of their eye, and you know, regardless of your size, this gives you the capability to do that. So finally, let's just talk a little bit about what is direct mail automation. When we talk about this, there's just some key elements that I want to make sure we just discuss, and this might stoke some questions on your part. And feel free to continue adding your questions to the Q&A box as we move along here. So let's talk about what is direct mail automation. So one, we've talked about that it's not meant to be a replacement of your really large campaigns. It's really meant to be that correspondence mail, that element where now you're kind of uncovering a gap in leveraging mail that you've just really never had the ability before to take advantage of. That you're sending to smaller, more segmented people. You're sending them more engaging, more relevant pieces of mail, right? You're able to now have those thank you cards go out. You're able to now have that kind of annual, reminder to go out via mail for the, when the subscription needs to get updated, right? All those things that you often have not done just because it's so hard with mail sometimes with the administration. That's really what automated direct mail is looking to solve. Additionally, it's baked into your process. So this isn't it's not a manual operation anymore. That once you've created the design templates you like, you've created the messaging that you like, you can easily create a new message as easy as email. And now it's baked into your process. So when that opportunity closes, when that link gets clicked, when that web form gets filled out, right, when someone adds a new contact to the system, mail happens. And so it really gets up the quality, because on the other end, when the recipient receives that and they see it's from you, they have no idea how you put this together. For all they know, you went through the effort that it takes to do direct mail that they might be familiar with on their behalf. So you're able to do it with much less effort, and they're able to still experience it in a way that has the value as if you did. And so it's baked in, and it happens automatically out of the system. And additionally, it realizes the good intentions of your staff. And I mean, I've been one where I have a stack of cards on my desk, and I want to send out thank you cards to my new customers, or to, maybe some people sent me some referrals. I'm really grateful, and I want to do it. But you know what? Life happens. And the process of actually writing that piece of mail and putting a stamp on it and getting it in the mailbox, I just can't get it done. And so what's great about this is that it provides that vehicle where now your salespeople, your marketing people know that those really important touch points. Thank you for that referral. Thank you for that, for coming on as a new client. Thank you for becoming one of our pilot customers for this product. Those are really important communication that really makes the life better between you and your customer. You can now realize those good intentions. They don't have to sit back and people feel bad that they wish they could do this, but they just haven't been able to. You can now enable that for them, which makes your customer more happy, makes your staff more happy, and now you get to benefit and reap that over time. And that's what we're talking about with direct mail automation, is really enabling these elements on a regular basis. Finally, it provides some fulfillment and delivery reporting, right? So that now you have a visibility into the direct mail process within this arena, that you can actually see when something gets sent out, right? You can see when they receive it, when it's delivered, right? So this is kind of a very interesting thing if you have a coordinated process, whether it's for email or even if you have a sales process where you want your salesperson to call the day after they receive that sales packet. It's very powerful, because now the salesperson can be alerted and have a dashboard that says, hey, these 17 people received their packets yesterday, right? Again, sometimes larger campaigns will have that capability, but rarely do you find it in a simple small batch, several hundred, several thousand, even down to a single piece of mail. And so it really could enhance your sales process as a coordinated effort. And additionally, you have the ability to increase the value of your profiles, right? So not only are you seeing this activity being logged as history that now a salesperson could go in and look and say, what's happened here? And you can see the mailers that have gone out. But additionally, if you're driving them back to web forms, elements that, digital body language that's being tracked, you can leverage mail to engage people and gather more information, right? So maybe you have people that, right, you have bad email addresses for. So you send out mailers and say, look, we've been so sad we haven't been able to keep in touch with you. And you drive them to a web form to update their information. And so it's just engaging them. Or maybe you've lost touch, that people have accidentally, your mail starts going into their spam folder. And so the mail can start to engage and move the inbox and get to places inside the organization that the digital just has been struggling with ways to reach. So that's what direct mail automation provides. There are many others, but I think that captures the key. So I'm happy to take your questions, and it's a delight to be with you today. There's no question too hard, and we'll try and get everything we can here on the air, and anything we are not able to answer on the air here, I will make sure and follow up with David and answer all of your questions offline.
Hey, John. All right, I've got a couple questions here that that have been submitted, so I'll go ahead and just run those by you, and we can work our way down the list. So first question is I'm in high-tech industry. Can you give me some good examples of ways that you've seen people use mail effectively?
Sure. So high-tech is a great example because high-tech tends to lean heavily on the digital means of kind of getting their message out. And so there's an even greater opportunity as it relates to mail because it is different. The other aspect too is there are many people in the high-tech industry, your customers are probably not all in high-tech. So the decision makers that you're reaching are probably in those top two generations. They're probably baby boomers or in the greatest generation. Those are the decision makers. And so by reaching out and engaging them with mail, you provide an often preferred level of engagement, and you're able to kind of move past maybe the younger gatekeepers who are using the digital means and engage these people in the way that they desire to be engaged. So one example I can give is a software company that they have annual renewal subscriptions, and they often have a 6-week, prior to renewal, they'll start reaching out to their customers and kind of seeing how things are going and putting together the deal for the renewal. And sometimes they get it, several, sometimes it can be 5, 10, 15% of their customers. They just have a real struggle getting a hold of them with their normal email means, and then they follow up with phone calls, and even sometimes that's challenging. And so they send out a mailer, right, that might have a special offer in it. So if they haven't reached them like 2 weeks in, they just start sending out automated mailers, which then engage people and provide another vehicle to kind of come in because, again, they haven't been able to get through to them with the email and the phone. And so mail provides this additional channel that, because it looks like correspondence mail, right, it looks like a handwritten envelope coming through in the mail, it passes right through and gets directly to the decision maker. So that's one example, David.
Great. Another question here, does mail have to be batched, or can Eloqua trigger a single piece of mail?
So great question. So Eloqua can absolutely trigger a single piece of mail. And so we talked about that automated direct mail is really baked into the process. So in your timeline, there may be instances, right, where maybe it only happens a few times a month, that there's a particular web form someone fills out, but it's really, really valuable. And when they fill that form out, one piece of mail goes out. So it's not a batch, it's not a campaign, it's just a single piece of mail. And ultimately, all trigger mail is like that, where it's just one-off pieces of mail based off of specific events, and they just all happen to add up, and you might send out 1,000 that month or more. But each one of those started as a single piece of mail based on a particular event that was sent from a particular person to a particular person.
Okay, great. Another question is, can I send mail on behalf of my salespeople using this?
Yes, the answer is yes. So the process in setting up inside Eloqua and inside the SureShot Spark plug is you'll be able to set up a particular mailing, who it is that's going to be mailed from. And one aspect is the record owner. And so if you have a fairly standard security model where you have record owners, et cetera, kind of account managers or relationship managers on those records, you can send out on behalf of those people, which again, going back to my previous slide, it really helps kind of maintain the good intentions because they would love to write those messages themselves, but they just can't do it. And so you're enabling them to really be more effective. So yes, that's absolutely possible and definitely recommended.
Okay, great. One other question, one last question here is, can I trigger mail before and after the delivery? I'm sorry, can I trigger email before and or after the delivery of the direct mail piece?
Yes, you can. And so there's a process that the kind of postal service has these smart barcodes, and so when your piece is you can there are 4 or 5 stages as it goes through the process, and so you could certainly start an email, for example, when it goes from processing to mailed. You could send an email and say, hey, this is on your way, we're on its way, we're really excited, and then once it gets set to delivery, you could send another email that says, right, it's really just around setting up a trigger based off of those changing data values inside the system.
Great. Well, that's all the time we have for questions. I'm going to go ahead and take control back over for just real briefly, and then we'll wrap up.
Great. Thank you.
So just thanks, John, for your time, and we appreciate it. I thought that was very insightful. I think that offers a great view of how direct mail can really be leveraged within the concept of marketing automation. And I think it's I think statistically there's a lot of data that supports the value of multi-channel campaigns, and the automation that Cloud2You provides within Eloqua really makes this as simple as it is to send an email out. In other words, thinking of a nurturing campaign, I can take my nurturing campaign that may be comprised of entirely just emails today and very easily and seamlessly add direct mail into that nurturing campaign. That's a quick and easy way to think about that is, hey, when we nurture, we don't only nurture via email, but we nurture via email and direct mail, and that's a way to do that. So I'll close with this, and this is just really our shameless plug, which I've aptly entitled the Shameless Spark Plug. What I wanted to do is just, obviously, we're talking very heavily about Cloud2You and the direct mail Spark Plug, but I just wanted to also share, we have a number of different apps that we provide for Eloqua, and really what each one of these apps is designed for and what they're born out of is my personal desire and support of Eloqua as an application, and just the value that Eloqua provides to corporations and to different companies. And my personal desire is to see the value of that be able to be increased. And I've been around Eloqua in this marketing automation space for over 10 years. As I've gone through that journey, there's always been things along the way that I've come across and said, it would be great if Eloqua could do this, or the marketing automation system could do this. And so, a very kind of very personal to me to see and find the apps and the partners that bring a lot of those things to bear and bring a lot of those capabilities to the table. And that's what we've done is we've built apps that we believe strongly in provide additional value to help you exponentially increase the money that you're spending with Eloqua. And many of these apps are very cost effective, and the comparative cost that you're getting that you're paying for Eloqua and these apps is relatively low, but they really do give you more out of that investment, and that's what they're really designed to do. So we have apps that focus on data, on channel marketing, content marketing, and events, and obviously specifically talking about the Cloud2You direct mail app. So with that, also just wanted to let you know that we do have some upcoming webinars. March 7th, we'll have Fresh Address joining us and talking about the latest and greatest in email list building and cleaning. will also be joined on the 14th of March by Zoom Info, and they're going to be talking about how we can take our marketing data to the next level. So we're really excited to continue to have this series going. There will be a this is being recorded, so this will be available for on-demand viewing, and we'll be in contact with you to remind you of these upcoming webinars. Again, thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can also follow Cloud2You and John Klein at @Cloud2You. Thanks for joining, and we look forward to seeing you on our next broadcast.